Hello and welcome to the Unbundled Attorney Mastermind Podcast. My name is Dave Aarons and I'm the founder and CEO of Unbundled Attorney. In this podcast, we interview our unbundled attorneys, as well as the leading experts in the industry, to identify the best practices for converting leads into paying clients and how to ethically and profitably deliver unbundled legal services and other affordable options in your practice. To learn more about how our exclusive unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com.
All right, welcome to the Unbundled Lawyer Podcast. Really excited to be back and filming these episodes again. It's been a few months. We've gone through a lot of transitions, a lot of work to be able to launch this new brand, and comes with it a new level of commitment to educating the consumers about what unbundled legal services is, how it works, and how they can get access to affordable legal services through unbundled lawyers like yourself. And so really excited to be relaunching this podcast and bringing you tips and suggestions and strategies that have worked really, really well for attorneys that have worked with us for a very long time, so that you can most effectively implement these service options into your practice and ultimately build a very successful firm providing these unbundled services. So would love to welcome back Bobby Buchanan. This is a round two for us, which I'm really excited about. Bobby's been working with us for many, many years, and he was on the podcast about 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
And so this is going to be a really great opportunity to see how his practice has evolved over the years, and also how you've been testing out some new ways in which you're providing services to your clients. And so really appreciate you coming back and sharing what's been working well.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's great to be here.
Yeah, man. So I thought maybe a good place to start is recently you've been blessed with the gift of fatherhood.
Yes,
your first. Right?
Yeah.
So how old and how's that going for you? And then we can maybe talk a little bit about how that's impacted the way you're running your practice.
Yeah. So we had Luke about 3.5 months ago. So we're new parents and just adjusting to that. Figuring out what our day-to-day is. My wife, she's staying home. I'm the sole breadwinner, if you will. So just figuring out a routine. There really is not much of a routine with a 3.5-month-old, but it's changed. It's kind of changed everything. It's made everything more important and more focused, and made me want to figure out exactly what I'm doing with my business and where I'm going with it, and making sure that the phone is ringing, making sure that the business is getting done, making sure that we're, the revenue is increasing every month so I can give my family the life that they deserve. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and so comes with that a greater level of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because it's not just the success of yourself and your firm and even you and your wife, but now you have someone that's really relying on that income to be able to feed and raise him, right? So so there's a new level of responsibility, but there's also the aspect of time management and balancing out how to make sure you're showing up for him and for your wife, and also be able to manage all the responsibilities of the firm. So maybe you can just talk briefly about how that shifted for you and how you've been able to manage that both those worlds to the best of your ability. I'm sure you're still trying to figure out that piece of the puzzle too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a much bigger expectation when you have a kid to be home after work. So, I'm not doing as much networking, if you will, after work. And one of the nicest thing about having a firm, and one of the reasons that I did start my own practice, is flexibility with time. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I don't have court now, I can stay home and help the day start, make sure that my wife can kind of get prepared herself before I leave so that her day goes better. And right. I think that that's the best part about having your own practice is you can figure out what your schedule needs to be for your family. And so, typically if I do have court, I'll be out the door by 8:30. I'll be home by 5:30. If I don't have court, I'll go into work around 10 o'clock or something like that. But yeah, makes your time in the office so much more important. You want to make sure that you're getting everything done quickly and efficiently so that you can get home to your family and focus on what's truly important.
Right. So is there anything specific that you've done either in the most recent months or even just before, he was born, to get clarity on like, well, what's most important in my practice, or how do I want to be living? Because now you have to think about how you want to live your lifestyle, like how you want to build your work around your lifestyle rather than your lifestyle around your work. Right. So like make sure that you're able to show up on both ends. So is there anything specific that you've engineered or done coming into fatherhood or even since then to be able to like balance out both those worlds really well?
Yeah. I think the number one thing that has made me be able to feel like I have more control over all of that is good people. And this is a big difference from when I think we spoke before. I didn't feel like I had a cohesive team that I was working with.
Yeah.
So I have right now an associate attorney who is just licensed a few months ago, an office manager, and then a paralegal. And they're all fantastic, and I hope they watch this podcast. No, they are truly my rocks.
You guys are doing great.
They're truly my rocks. I mean, they are all very dedicated to the work that we do. They are very good at what they do. My office manager, who has been a legal secretary or an executive assistant for 35 years, the first day that I hired her, I was CCing her on emails, and she was reading in between the lines and, getting stuff done, taking stuff off my plate. And so that has been a huge contributor to me figuring out how to balance things and now we've really started talking about systems within the firm, and we're starting to put together a kind of an office wiki where we're recording our different processes and iterating on our processes and starting to really kind of function more like a business rather than a one-man show. So that's the most exciting part. I mean, it's a hard work. I'd be lying to say that we're firing on all 6 cylinders every day.
Right.
But at least we're pushing forward every day and going, okay, this isn't working. We need to tweak this. We need to work on this. And that gives me the sense of being able to look forward to say, okay, what is my vision for my work-life balance? How do I want things to look? What do I want this firm to look like in 5 years? And kind of trying to always keep that in mind so that we can push things in that way.
Did you create a vision? Like, did you write out specific goals, or do you have a mindset in terms of both like on an income level, in terms of the structure of your firm, like what it is you're looking to build? Like, have you taken some time to think through what that would look like, or have you written it out? Did you draw it out? Like, what was your process in terms of, because that's one of the things we have conversations with our attorneys all the time is like, if you had your firm, what's the ideal vision for your firm? And some of them go, I've never actually really thought about that. It's always been like, how do I pay the bills? Where's the next client coming from? And when perhaps when they have a consistent number of clients coming in now, then it's like, okay, well, what do I want to do? Right? Because we can ramp up the volume, we can slow it down. What is the ideal vision that I have? So did you take some time to get some clarity on that? And if so, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I feel like it's something that it's a continuing process that I've always been the type of person who believes that they can, manifest what they're thinking about or thinking about what the vision is and wanting to get there. And I've written it down in one way or the other over the course of years, but I think it's something that my thought process is much more, I would say, oral. The way that I create my ideas and refine my ideas is about talking about them. And it's, as far as what I have envisioned for my practice, number one is just wanting to love what I do, wanting to make sure that when I'm coming in on Monday, I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm feeling like I'm doing meaningful work. I'm feeling like the business is functioning in a way that's not out of control. And I want to have a business that does operate without me being there. I'm not quite there yet. You know, I that's going to take some time, but I want a business where we have enough systems set up so that my firm knows how to do the sales aspect if I'm not there, knows how to sign up the clients, get the work done, and all that. So it's a work in progress, but I truly do love working on the business more, if not as much as in the business.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really is a defining skill of an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right. It's like they're not just the mechanic or the technician. You know, there's a great book called E-Myth Revisited. There's even one for lawyers specifically, which is about the technician, which is the lawyer, the practicing of law. But then there's the actual entrepreneur, which is all about the systems that are involved in engineering the firm such that in accordance with their mind's eye, what it is they want to create. Right. Do they want? And one of the things that I've always appreciated about you, including the last time we were interviewing you, was the amount of automations and how you've embraced technology to the best of your ability in order to streamline some of the things in your practice that should not necessarily require manual entry. Right. And ways in which you can take some of those tasks or that time off your plate so that those things happen automatically so that you can focus on the things that are most important. And with that extra time, you could just do more legal work, but you also continue to take that time and continuing to work on the business. Right. And it seems like that is one of the uses of time in a business that can pay the biggest dividends long term. Right. Is like really focusing on those systems. So maybe you can just share briefly because there was a period of time when you were, I think, pretty much a solo practitioner. You had, I think, a paralegal. At least that was roughly where you were at before. What were some of the steps like for attorneys that are either a solo or maybe solo with just an assistant, but then are running into those challenges, which many of our attorneys do, is they start getting more leads, they start landing cases, and they're like, okay, this is great, but now I have a new challenge, which is, okay, how do we get this legal work done in such a way where I can still respond to these new clients and keep the retention up, but then also make sure that I'm getting the legal work done in the background. Right? And that's that scaling process, right? So it sounds like you've been, engaged in that process for some time. So maybe you can just share briefly, like anything that you learned in terms of the hiring process. Maybe some of the steps you went through to source that assistant, the paralegal, the associate, whether it was, maybe through referrals or whatever that might be. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about the systems that you've been developing to make that team work so cohesively.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the people, finding good people, the number one thing that I think has helped me do that is developing good relationships within the legal community and being authentic. When I found my office manager, I hired her on Indeed, and then my other two employees I found through referrals, basically. But I found her on Indeed, and it was actually during a part of my practice where I was feeling pretty low. I was feeling like, what am I doing? I can't figure out this hiring thing. I had hired a couple people that didn't work out. I hired a kind of an office manager who ended up stealing money from me. Basically, I advanced her some money, and then she ghosted me entirely and didn't show up to work again.
Wow.
So I was just feeling pretty down about, like, what am I doing not right here? Did a little soul searching and wrote this ad on Indeed that just basically laid out who I was and what I was looking for. And it was, it might have been just before my wife was pregnant, or maybe she had just gotten pregnant. And I was just basically like, hey, I'm this guy who's just trying to build a practice for my family, and I'd like to work with people who are passionate about the law and just want to help, and just, we want to work hard. We're down to earth. Like I'm not a micromanager, and I got a bunch of resumes, and one just really stood out because it was the most organized resume I'd ever seen. Like I could tell she was using invisible tables in Word to keep everything aligned. And her cover letter was as equally as authentic. And so she came in, and from appearances, we probably couldn't be more different. She's about 70 years old. She's African American. I'm 36 years old, not African American. But we sat down and we talked for an hour about life. And I was sharing with her that I think my father had just passed away. Her husband had just passed away. And we just connected, like just two human beings connecting and finding that we were aligned on a lot of these things that we were trying to do. And so that was an easy hire. And so she came aboard. And then from there, the other kind of what I would say to people looking for good people is decide that what you want, decide, you're looking for a great paralegal, and then start talking about it. Start talking about it with your colleagues and putting it out there. I think it's scary to talk about growing your firm or like wanting to expand. I think, in my experience, most attorneys, especially in the family law realm, they get scared about, that first hire. And so then talking about it with other colleagues, you get maybe negative pushback. You get people telling you like, oh, wow, I can't believe you're doing that. That's risky. And so sometimes I think we don't talk about wanting to grow our practice. But I tried to kind of shy away from that and started telling my colleagues, I'm looking for a law clerk or looking for a paralegal. And as far as my associate goes, she started working for me when she was a law clerk. A colleague of mine, he was opposing counsel on a case, said, I just had coffee with this young lady, and she seemed great. I just don't have, space for her. Ended up meeting with her. She was a go-getter and ended up hiring her, and she has worked out splendidly, and now she's an associate and working with me. And then my paralegal was similar. I posted something on a Facebook group of all my colleagues, domestic relations colleagues here, and opposing counsel on a case actually kind of gifted me her paralegal because she knew her paralegal wanted to be working downtown rather than in the suburbs. Right. And she let this very experienced, very driven paralegal go, and she started working for me. So that was kind of the evolution of me finding good people. It's really hard to find good people. It's hard to find good people. They're the most important piece to growing any sort of business, is what I've discovered. And it's the one thing about hiring that seems to be the most common mistake that I've seen in my business, and also just in seeing in terms of lawyers and their hiring decisions, is they make them really hastily. You know, because and a lot of times it's because maybe they've waited so long that there's fires burning and they know they need more help. And so first candidate comes across the desk, they're making the decision. Right. As opposed to like really putting those irons in the fire of like running some ads. Yeah. Right. Not just taking whoever might be available, right? Because once you interview one person, you say, okay, well, this person could work. I could see that working. Right. But then you interview 2, 3, or 4. You see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 resumes, and then it starts to give you the context of like, oh, okay, so she's strong here, but kind of weak here. This person has more technological savviness. She's a very good communicator, but doesn't have as much experience, right? You can start to weigh it out, right? Because you have some context of some different amount of people. And so, I think what you're saying in terms of really being very conscious about how you do your hiring and being potentially patient about it. And then also I think one of the things that you shared was really important, worth underscoring, is that you first got very clear on
what exactly am I doing here? Who am I looking for? Right?
Yeah.
Like, who am I?
Yeah.
Right? And so, therefore, who am I looking for to fill this role? Not only just the role, right? Because you can say family law paralegal in Chicago hiring today,
Right.
right? That's one way of advertising, right?
Right.
And that's just a really broad net,
Yeah.
right? Whereas you said you took some soul searching. You said, well, who am I? What is it that I'm really trying to do? What are my principles? What are my goals? And just put that right in the ad.
Yeah.
I said, this is what I'm looking for. And in some ways, it's like a tuning fork.
Yeah.
Where you're setting a frequency of like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And then people that can attune to that will be the ones that apply.
Yeah.
And not always, right? There's going to be a certain amount of people that will apply to anything they see.
Yeah.
But certainly people that are more discerning in terms of the positions they're looking for, which are usually the best people.
Yep.
Right? The best people aren't going to apply for every ad because they could probably get a job in many, many places.
Yep.
Right? So they're also looking for that ideal position, right? That's going to be a really good fit. And so by you taking that time to really make sure that you're clarifying exactly who I am, what I'm looking for, the type of person I'm looking for, how we show up in our practice, it really makes sure that it's clarifying for those inbound people that are looking for that position, exactly what it is that this opportunity presents for them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what they can expect. So that seems really, really important as well. So you put out some feelers, you get some staff in through colleagues and through posting and through just sharing and talking about what it is you're trying to do and being willing to, take that next step. And because you're right, like a lot of solos might feel a little uncomfortable. Like, well, if I'm putting out this money, is it going to make sure that I can bring in additional revenues and so forth? Maybe you can just speak briefly to that because I think a lot of solo practitioners have that concern.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wow, $2,000-3,000 a month, right? Like I'm barely covering, I'm barely keeping up with what I have. That means I'm going to be putting that over to her or him. I'm not necessarily going to, am I going to be able to make that up in revenue? And so a lot of attorneys that go through that and they come out the other side, they're like, why didn't I do this sooner? But maybe you can speak just briefly to an attorney that might have those concerns about maybe what it looks like from the other side.
Yeah.
Now that you have some of that help. And then we can talk some about systems.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do the math is easy enough to do. Let's just say in a traditional, if you're just doing traditional services, you're billing out that paralegal. You gotta be, and you're billing them out anywhere from $75 to $125 an hour, and that is a employee they're only doing billable work typically.
Yeah.
So they could probably bill 5 to 6 hours a day at minimum. And if you extrapolate that out over the month, it's really easy to see how they're going to be paying for themselves.
Right.
For themselves.
Yeah. If a salary is, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
If you can just as long as you're hitting this amount of hours each day.
Right.
5 hours a day, that's 25 hours a week, 100 hours a month. And if they're billing out at $7,500, you can see that revenue would be $7,500. There's a spread there. Right?
Yeah. And it's going to free up your time amazingly. So you're going to be able to focus on, it might have to be the collections aspect if that deserves more attention, or it might just free up your time to go bring in business in other places.
Right.
So I think the most important thing is you're finding somebody good for that position so that you're not having to spend too much time training them or, replacing them or whatever it may be. I think that as long as you find somebody that can competently get that job done, is a good fit for your firm, the numbers work out. And especially on a position like a paralegal where their salary isn't as high as an associate. They can get a lot of the work done. That I would probably say that's the place to start as far as expanding a firm, whether it's a contract paralegal, a virtual paralegal, or somebody that's coming in house.
Right.
That seems like the lowest kind of risk place to start. And if it doesn't work out, obviously, that's always difficult. I think about bringing people on and I worry about it too. I'm like, well, what happens if the business isn't there and this person is making a sacrifice to work for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to remind ourselves that if it doesn't work out and for some reason you have to let them go and they are truly a good employee, you'll be able to find another job for them. Like there are so many people looking for good people that you'll be able to help them get to the next step and not leave them, because that's what I worry about. Like I don't think it's fair to just bring people on and just haphazardly do it, and maybe you have to cut them loose because they are making some big transitions to be able to work for you.
Right.
And I think that if it doesn't work out, then you pick up the pieces from there, but it's worth the risk and you'll learn something from that risk.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. So once you start bringing on an associate, a paralegal, or secretary, you talked a bit about some of the systems that you're engineering in order to make that machine or that cohesiveness between the team, the roles, the responsibilities, the way tasks and things flow through the firm so that they're assigned accordingly and each person is holding up their side of the coin, so to speak. What are some of those systems that you've been implementing specifically to make your team work a lot more efficiently? Yeah,
so I guess we'll start on the sales side. So, for example, for an unbundled lead, when that comes in, and I think probably I was talking about this on the last podcast, is Zapier. Is it Zapier or Zapier? I never know.
I think it's Zapier.
Oh, is it? Okay, Zapier.
I'm guessing too.
It's I love that program. I mean, I think it's a genius app. I've been using computers since my dad was like the first guy in our little small town to get online, and I was downloading games from Princeton.edu. And so I've just been very familiar with computers and using them as tools to make stuff happen. So Zapier has been something that I've fully embraced and tried to weave into my practice as much as possible. So when an unbundled lead comes in, there's a few different things that happen. So, I don't remember exactly how I have it set up, but I know that when that email comes in, it shoots off a Slack message to Gloria, who's my office manager, and she's tasked with calling the leads.
Slack is a messaging platform for those that aren't familiar with it, right? It's an internal messaging platform where you have all your staff and team members there and you can send messages, but also Slack has integrations with many, many technological platforms, so they can create notifications within specific channels or whatever you need to notify your team.
Right. Yeah. So she gets the Slack message. She also gets a internal automated phone call to her phone that basically just calls and a robot says you have a new unbundled lead, because I just want to make sure that she's fully aware that lead is coming in.
Which is powered by Twilio, is it?
Yeah, it's powered by Twilio. And then we also have a Twilio text message that goes out to the lead that introduces them to our law firm. It gives them a Calendly link. So she'll jump on Slack. She'll just type in "got it" to the lead. She'll call the lead, see if she can get in touch with them. Obviously, we're set up right now with Clio Grow, so we have the integration with Unbundled going into Clio Grow. And from Clio Grow, she can tag the lead as to what type of case it is. So if it's a divorce case, she's tagging it that way. If it's a custody case and it's the father, she's tagging it that way, mother. And those tags get them into our automated email system where they're starting to get emails from us educating them about the whatever issue it is that they're having.
So the tag dictates which emails that client will receive.
Which
so you have emails for divorce, you have emails for custody, emails for visitation.
Right.
So that tag then tells the autoresponder, send these set of emails because it's this type of case.
Exactly.
Right.
So if they don't hire us right off the bat, they're at least getting those emails. And I would say couple months, I'll get somebody from 2 years ago that comes in and they say, I've read all your emails or I've watched all your videos, and they are so ready to hire. I mean, they have been thinking about it forever, and they've got the cash and they're good to go. So those are great. Those feel like the most kind of passive sale that you'll ever get.
Right. And you use Drip for your...
Yeah, I use Drip.
There's a few others, just MailChimp, Constant Contact, Aweber, ActiveCampaign. ActiveCampaign is more of a lead CRM, but also has that same capability. So you're using Drip,
Yeah, and there's nothing, the things that I'm doing with it are very basic in the grand scheme of things. So any of these tools can really pull off this sort of automation for the emails.
Right.
And I'm trying to think if there's any other processes in there with the Zap going in. I think the Zap adds them as a Google contact, which makes it really nice. So if I want to call them from my cell phone, I can just look at their name and type in their name to my cell phone, and it pops up the number right away.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it on the front end.
And that's engineering, primarily making sure you have someone reaching out to the lead in real time, making sure the lead's getting a text message in real time or as close to real time as possible, an email, with Clio Grow when it's tagged and moving forward, because obviously responding to the leads in that 5, 10, 15-minute window when they first come in is going to be a huge plus in terms of increasing your contact rate and making sure that they know that you've received their request and that you're getting in contact with them, so they don't necessarily keep searching for another attorney. So those are all systems that are really helpful to make sure you're making those outreach attempts, right?
Yeah.
In an automated way.
Yeah.
Or a systematic way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Every single time, whether you're busy or in court or something else is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the process, as far as those tools has been just great as far as making sure that we're staying top of mind for everybody as much as possible. And then after Gloria speaks with them, or sometimes she's on the other line, so I'll make the call initially. We have a Calendly link that sets them up for a 15-minute call. If she's talking with them, it'll set them up for a 15-minute call with me.
Yeah.
If I happen to talk to them initially, then we go straight to the in-office consult, and we have a Calendly link for that. So we're sending them notifications and reminders for coming into the office.
Yes. Because Calendly has that built in, right?
Right.
You book a Calendly event, and then it will send an email and a text message reminder, whatever you want, 15 minutes before, and then an hour before, 4 hours before, 24 hours before. So they're getting those reminders, and that also helps with eliminating some of the no-shows.
Yep.
Right? Some people just forget.
Yeah.
And your teammate, if it's having to be manual, your team might forget to call them, email them, text them, remind them to come in. So Calendly is really nice in the sense that it will automate all that reminding, so that isn't necessarily something that your staff has to do, other than maybe making a phone call.
Right. And I wasn't doing that before. Like, I had Calendly as a tool, but we weren't disciplined in using it every time. And I think that's one shift that I've probably made since the last time we talked, where I'm like, all right, this is not only do you have the tool, but you have to have the process to use the tool.
Yes.
So I made sure that I did a little training with Gloria, made sure that those Calendly links were right on her desktop, and that every single time we book an appointment with a potential client, it's got to be through Calendly.
Right.
So that we just know that those reminders are going out, and it just makes it a lot more seamless. But the process needs to be there.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Okay. From there, anything else you want to cover in terms of the way you work with your team, the way you assign tasks? Like, let's say you talk to the client and it's like, okay, well, let's get this person intake. Let's get these documents prepared. Anything else that you've been working on to streamline that back end process of it? Yeah.
So once they come in, once they become a client, we send out an intake form through Clio Grow. Or if it's a divorce case, I have a form that I'm just sending through Google Forms. But regardless, we send them an intake form. We get the information back from them, and then I've developed a system of checklists that we use to move things forward. I think eventually I'd like to get that more integrated with my practice management software. But right now, it's just a system on paper. And I think that that's a great place to start anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, and this is, I'm the number one victim of this. I try to fit it into whatever technology I have. Like I let the tool dictate my process rather than vice versa.
Right.
So this has been a good way for me to just go, okay, what is our process? And we have like a new case checklist where we have like a bunch of routine things that happen. I go down, I check boxes. That goes to Gloria. Based on that checklist, she's assigning tasks out to the paralegal or the associate. Mm-hmm. And then from there, everything is built on what happens in court. So on our first court date, come back, we'll have a court order, and then we pull out our order checklist. And our order checklist says what we need to do with that order. So whichever attorney, whether it's myself or the associate, takes the order checklist and says, okay, we're emailing this to the client. We're letting them know, is their appearance optional? Is it required? Is it recommended? There's a line that says, also advise the client that blank, putting that in there. There's a couple lines for, okay, what's the next task? Who do we assign that to? And so by doing that checklist for every single order, we're making sure that we're pushing the case forward. The next thing needs to happen.
And the appropriate people are taking care of the specific tasks that they're responsible for as part of the process that's been outlined.
Yep.
When this happens, then you do this, I do this person, blah, blah, blah. There's a system to it, right?
Yeah.
There is a system.
And we're starting to develop more the writing down each little step of, okay, when a case starts, we're always going to do a financial affidavit. And we just know that needs to be done. So that can just start automatically and we can move forward with it. So really mapping out each step of the case. But that's definitely a work in progress. We're not like complete with that, but something that we're constantly pushing forward. And
did you take some time initially before or maybe shortly after when you hired to map out each of the steps involved in each type of case? So was there some of that? And then also I'm sure some of it is just as you're going along, you're improving and modifying your systems.
Yeah.
Right? So a combination of both.
I wish I could say it was more of the former, but it's probably more of the latter.
Right. Which is fine.
Yeah.
But you have the mindset of like, as we're doing things, let's continue to work on improving the system for what it is we're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
And
rather than just doing it over and over.
And as I kind of conceptualize, and I think it plays into the sales process too, because when I've been thinking about wanting to put together some diagrams or maps for showing clients when they come in, because they want to know kind of what does the case look like. And so if we can more break down each little stage so they have an idea of like, okay, we're right here. We're trying to get over here. We're right here. And like we were talking before the podcast of when you're doing unbundled services, really getting them to focus on where you are right now.
Yes.
So I think the more that we do that internally, we can use that understanding to make kind of more of a simplified version for potential clients of just educating them about what the process is and what our process is. And so that's something that we're going to be implementing, being more clear on that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's a good segue to start talking a bit about how you've shifted the approach of your enrollment process and those initial consultations and those initial meetings in terms of what it is that you've been enrolling people with to start.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can just outline the evolution of that.
Yeah.
Maybe where things used to be, some of the challenges you ran into, and then some of the shifts you've made in terms of the service options that you're offering, typical price points, for your local market here, and how that's impacted your enrollments and overall in terms of like the downdraft of that, which is the systems that will then follow that. Hey.
Yeah. So I would say at the beginning when I was using Unbundled, I was a little bit more averse to unbundling things, a little bit more scared about doing it, or maybe overcomplicating it in my head. So I was trying to I would reduce my retainer to $1,500, but I was trying to sell everybody kind of the same thing on the phone, and just getting them to sign up for a $1,500 retainer over the phone. I wasn't really trying to bring them into the office at all. And I was having some success. I was having enough success, but it always felt like kind of a grind as far as the sales process went. Like I was trying to convince them that this was the solution, and was like, "Oh, just give me this money and we'll figure it out."
Right.
Well, like you'll find out next what's going to happen. And so it never felt like real, like I was helping them as much as I could.
Right.
So now I've definitely embraced more, and it's a work in progress of figuring out exactly how to do it. But we had a phone call in the last few months where we talked about the transition from kind of getting them to buy into what you're selling versus just talking to them about how can you help them.
Yes.
Like, and just asking enough questions to figure out, okay, can I actually help this person?
Yeah.
And do I have a service that can provide them value?
Right.
And so I've shifted my mindset when I'm on the phone with people now, and it has changed things a great deal. I mean, I think I've doubled what I was doing before as far as converting clients.
Right.
So we're figuring out exactly where they're at in the process, what their goals are, what the immediate step is right in front of them, and I will be setting them up. I've been sticking. You'll be proud of me. I've been sticking to the script. I've been sticking to the script more, and that has helped. That has helped. Just getting it more tight on the phone.
Well, it's systematic in some ways too, right? Because you can then modify the script accordingly. But just having a script, right, is a system that you can start to predict. It's like a scientific approach. It's like, I can put in this many inputs. If I follow this procedure, this is my output. Okay, what if I modified this approach?
Right.
Do the same thing? Because the clients are similar types of leads, similar types of cases you're seeing every day, day in, day out. And so if you're modifying that approach each time in a systematic way, then you can really test what's going to work best. Yeah. Right? What makes the most sense, what clients like the most, and what gets the desired outcome.
And I think for me, to become better at the sales piece has been dropping preconceived notions of like, I think I was overthinking like, well, this part of the script's not going to work because they're going to say this or that. And then now I'm just like, I don't know what they're going to say. Like you really don't know what people are you don't know where they're at. Like you have an idea of where they're at mentally or emotionally in this process, but you really don't know. And I think by using the script and just trusting like, hey, I'm just going to see what their response is to this statement or this question, without having any preconceived notion of who they are, what their problems are, what's important to them, and just listening to them and learning about what's important to them. I talked to a guy just about 2 days ago where he called and he was looking for a divorce, and I listened to him, and he had like kind of some worries or concerns about it, and I said, well, it works like this, maybe not like this, and he, at the end of the conversation, there was just a meeting of the minds. And he came in and paid $500 within, like 45 minutes of talking to him, and now we're off and running. Yeah. So, just the listening piece is huge.
listening into what's going on for them and getting their world.
Yeah.
Right. And then being about like, this person has a need, right? No one's going to submit the request. No one's going to put out the inquiry of like, hey, I need an attorney.
Right.
Go on a website, do a search, do the research, watch a video, submit a request, call, reach out, follow up if they don't have a genuine need.
Yeah.
Right. And there's limitations to those needs like financial, or maybe they don't have a case and so forth. But for the most part, people can put together some money and people have a genuine leads, at least with our leads. Right. So it's really getting at, okay, so how can I really help this person? Being client focused, I think, would be a way to say it. That's kind of cliche, but it is really like listening to them and you said something earlier. It was, trying to convince them that what you're selling they should buy, to like fit what you're selling, to get them to buy what you're selling,
right?
As opposed to figuring out what is this that this person needs. How can I creatively serve that?
Yeah,
right. And get at it and ask questions and be like, how could we go about doing what it is you're trying to do, given whatever you have available to you to make it happen?
Yeah. And
that's a different quality of conversation. The listening has to be much deeper because you have to get a sense for what's really going on here.
Yeah.
Right. And I would assume that changes the dynamic of the connection with each human being as you're having those conversations, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. And then a lot of times, even if it's just they have $250, like we can make it profitable to say, okay, well, we'll draft these initial documents that you need. That's going to be $250 just to start things off. And the automation piece is what makes that profitable. I mean, we've automated a lot of the basic forms. And so if that person says, yeah, let's do that, it takes my paralegal about an hour to do it. I spend about 10 minutes looking it over, and that makes sense for everybody involved. And there's a fair chance that once they go that step, then it's like, okay, well, so your next court date, we're going to be handling, or you're going to be presenting this motion. If you want us to do it, then it's going to be $500 for that appearance.
Sure.
And a lot of those people at that point are like, yeah, I think I can scrape together that money because I want you to be there.
Right.
So yeah, it opens a lot of doors to kind of just pull back and say, okay, where are we meeting this person? Where are they at? But like you said, they're calling you because they want to hire a lawyer. Like they've exhausted enough options where they're like, I really can't get this done on my own. I need the outside expertise.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we can be like a little bit more specific about some of the service options you've been offering. You mentioned that you're having more folks come in the office.
Yeah.
I think has that been pretty core? I mean, you've got some people that may not really don't want to, or they're in a different area.
Yeah.
Right. So we can talk a little bit about that, but more specifically, what are the types of unbundled service options that you've been leading with?
Yeah.
And also be curious to hear like how it's impacted your conversion rate.
Yeah.
And like overall with your leads, so that attorneys have a good sense for like, hey, if you implement these service options, like this is the impact it's had on my conversion and revenues and so forth. Because there could also be the concern that, well, if I don't get the 1,500 or do the full rep case, that's actually less money is I think the concern. Well, if I only take 500 or 1,000, that's less than if I got the full representation.
Right.
But in reality, that usually is very different because you get more clients retaining and so many of them will transition. So maybe you can just share what your personal experience was in making that shift and what are some of the specific service options that you offer as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do bring them into the office. Right now we are doing a free 30-minute consultation. And the basic service that usually makes sense for people, especially in the contested space, custody cases are kind of the big one, is the paperwork and the first court date. And so we charge $750 for that. There are court costs involved too, but a lot of people can get a waiver for that. So we can include working up the waiver documents, and we can actually just file that, and then they go to court without even us having to go to court to get the waiver. So that's another option for people. So $750 gets you the initial paperwork filed, served, and we appear at the first court date.
Okay.
And then once we appear at the first court date, we figure out what's going on and we go from there. And like I was talking to you before, right now we're experimenting with it being kind of a monthly, about $500 a month that we do for continued representation. Mm-hmm. And the way we've crafted the retainer agreement for that is basically saying, we're helping you resolve this in a summary manner. A lot of cases in Cook County, there's really no evidentiary hearings. You're pushing everything through mediation. Maybe you have a pretrial conference with the judge, maybe a settlement conference with the parties, but there's not any heavy trial prep that we have to do. So that's what they're getting for the $500 a month. And then we put into the retainer, if we're going to litigate this case more aggressively, here's a price breakdown. I've actually just started experimenting with this model, so TBD whether or not it makes sense ultimately. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to start trying to, like we talked about, each stage of the case and what comes after that first court date.
Yeah.
And I think the most difficult thing that I've struggled with in compartmentalizing each part of the case is, as lawyers, our brains are built to think of every single wild possibility that could happen in the case, to think about every little alley it could go down. Mm-hmm. And so you start to freak yourself out before you've even gotten started, and you're thinking about, well, I can't unbundle everything after the first step because I don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a good reminder that you don't need to know exactly what's going to happen. Like, you don't know what's going to happen on, the second court date before you've done the first. Sometimes you go to the first court date, you meet the opposing party, they're a lot more agreeable than you thought they would be, and things kind of move forward in a more predictable fashion. Mm-hmm. And then you can say, okay, the second court date, I have a good idea of how it's going to turn out.
Right.
Or maybe you go to court and it is really litigious, and you realize that it's that type of case that's going to require a lot of hand-holding, a lot of, another level of focus and diligence. And so you can charge accordingly. And,
right.
And if your client doesn't want to pay that, then you have avoided getting stuck in a case that is a headache.
Right, because that's what the initial offering you're describing is a limited scope representation.
Yeah.
Right? Limited scope retainer agreement. I'm drafting these documents. I'm appearing for this hearing. I am not doing X, Y, Z, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And really being specific and saying, okay, we're just doing this for this court date. And in Cook County or in Illinois, if your client is there, mm-hmm. you can withdraw right then from the case just by making an oral motion to withdraw. So it's easy to get out of the case.
That's right.
Or if they're not there, you can just send in basically a notification that you are withdrawing, and it's you don't have to show up to court to get out of the case.
Right.
So it definitely opens up a lot of flexibility. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, judges are very receptive to it.
Yeah.
And the ones who aren't receptive to it, there is some pushback from some judges, but there are organizations now that are advocating so much for unbundled services and limited scope services that they have the chief judge's ear, and they can, call up the chief judge and say, hey, this one judge isn't open to this idea. And they'll hear about it, because the law is very clear that unbundled services, limited scope representation is something that is allowed on every single court date.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. What is your sense for why the clients are so receptive to that limited scope service option that you're starting to lead with?
Yeah.
There's obviously cost. It's clear, but maybe you can share for you why you feel like when they're coming in, they're more comfortable with that than $1,500, and then we'll set up payments, right? Like, why is it that they are so receptive
Right.
to leading with that one service option to start?
Yeah, I think because it's it's lower risk for them. They're not doling out $1,500, $2,000. It's clear. So you can say here's what you're getting charged for. You're not going to get charged for phone calls and emails and, how much exact time I'm in court or how much time we're spending drafting. And your goals can be very very specific. Okay, like here's the goal for the first court date. We want to present your case. We want to open the narrative of your case and let the judge know, kind of position your messaging for the judge. That's our goal for this first court date. We want to introduce you to the judge. We want to draw a connection with the other side and start that relationship. And so they can go, okay, I understand all that. That makes sense. So I think, I think it's the clarity and feeling like there's as low risk as you can get with that initial buy-in.
Yeah, and they're really just signing on for that next step. And then depending on how that goes, Anthony Sanders has been on the podcast. He's going to come on again here shortly to break down some of the phases and get a little bit more specific so that attorneys can better understand how to break up a custody case and divorce case into phases and different ways you can unbundle each aspect. But he talks about how that it's like a try it before you buy it in a way.
Yeah.
That's the way he describes it. But really, it's a low price barrier. Let's handle this one thing. And then we can see what happens. And also you get an opportunity to see if this is working well for you in terms of this relationship.
Yep.
And you're happy with the way they're providing services to you. And then based on that, then you can make a decision on whether you want to enlist for additional services from there, which, a good percentage of people do, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's probably, I think most of the attorneys have shared that when they do the limited scope, it's about at least 50%, if not more, will hire for an additional unbundled service or transitional full representation from there.
Yeah.
And so it gives them the opportunity to try to get that experience of working with you. And once they have it, and they get also an experiential sense of what's going to happen when they go to court, and maybe, hey, this is a little more complicated than maybe I'd thought originally if they don't have as much experience.
Yeah.
That many of them are going to decide like, okay, I definitely want additional services.
Yeah.
And then we also talked a little bit earlier about how that also gives you an opportunity to try the client out, right?
Yeah.
And get a sense for whether this is going to be a good fit for you and your firm based upon what your goals and the types of clients you want to work with. Because we all know there's certain types of cases we get involved in, and maybe later on kind of went, hey, maybe I shouldn't have got involved in this one.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more difficult to go from full scope representation to limited or no than it is to go from limited scope to then transition to full, right? That can be done anytime you wish,
Right.
right? But it's when we get into the full rep case and then it turns into this type of situation where it becomes really burdensome on our energy and our well-being. And that's part of what family law comes with, is stress and conflict and so forth. And so being able to mitigate the exposure to the types of cases or types of clients that can really sap a lot of that energy and passion that you have for providing services in family law seems like is very, very critical to sustaining the practice long term.
Yeah.
And continuing to have the passion and enthusiasm for serving clients, because you're just not getting exposed to as many of the really negative aspects or negative types of folks that might really be a drag on your overall well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And when the money starts to be an issue and you get in this almost adversarial position with your own client over, you owe me $3,500 and you can't get out of the case because you have some pending hearing or something like that, it becomes really difficult and it's counterproductive for everybody involved, but everybody involved feels kind of trapped in the case.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if I could eliminate that 100%, it would lower my stress level immensely. So that is something certainly that I'm, always trying to iterate on and figure out, okay, how can we unbundle things a little bit more and more? And like you said, if you have a good client and you realize like this is someone, because we all know that working for or with people that we vibe with is so much easier and so much more enjoyable. I think as human beings, there is a natural want to help each other.
Right.
And we're social creatures. So if you find people that you're like, you know what, I really want to help this guy.
Right.
Or he's seems like he's doing all the things that he should be doing. He's getting the short end of the stick. He's honest with me. He gets back to me when I ask him to. He doesn't have wild expectations about what's possible here. Then that's somebody that, let's do regular representation with, and let's talk about what this can look like. So even talking about it, I feel less stressed.
Yeah. Well, and it's usually something you can figure out in the first 2 to 4 weeks, right?
Yeah.
When you draft those documents and you go to that hearing, you're going to have a pretty good sense for were they able to get you the information you needed? Were they responsive when you needed them to be responsive? How were they when they showed up? And just overall, what was it like working for them in with that one service option? That's enough to make a decision whether you want to continue. Just like the client's deciding, do I want to continue with Robert? You're also deciding, hey, is this really seem like a good fit for both? Yeah. And I think that's where we're also avoiding is not getting into a situation where you have like a win-lose or you just don't feel like it's a good relationship, but because of the confines of the requirements of the way the court system works, you feel stuck.
Right.
And that seems like it's the greatest drain for attorneys that are practicing family law is they just don't feel like they have the option to end a relationship that otherwise, if they were getting into business with someone, they wouldn't want to continue in that partnership.
Right. Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So maybe the last thing for today is just you can share, because I think there is like the myth or misunderstanding or just fear or concern that if you provide unbundled services to start with, because the cost is typically lower, right, which is why clients are so much more receptive to it, and you're doing a limited scope, that maybe that would be less revenue or just it would lead to less money than asking for more, right? So maybe you can just share briefly in whatever way you can make sense to you about how that's impacted your conversion rate or revenue or whatever is just easiest to share. So that other attorneys can go, oh wow, like maybe I'll get a little bit more creative in terms of offering these types of unbundled service options for some of these reasons we've talked about, because it seems like, and have some maybe a little bit more trust and belief in the fact that that might work out better for them in the long run. Yeah,
absolutely. So I think before, when I was doing Unbundled, and I was kind of just trying to sell the $1,500 retainer, and sometimes I would be packaged as, okay, it's $1,500 now, and then it's another $1,500 in 30 days to kind of round out a $3,000 retainer. I was converting, it was maybe 8% of the leads or something like that. And
a little less than 1 out of 10.
Yeah, a little less than 1 out of 10. And it felt like a grind, and that does something to your energy too when you're on the phone with all these people and you realize that you can't help them or they're disappointed and you're disappointed. So now that I've transitioned, I think it's probably, I got to look at my numbers, but it's probably like 30% or something like that that I'm converting at this point. And absolutely no drop off in the revenue. I mean, it's been an increase. I think the ROI is higher at this point, and it's only going to get better because the cases typically take 4 to 18 months. So I think that there's even more on the back end that I'm going to be able to get, that I will be getting from these clients. So it's hard to even talk about because it's been such a non-issue. It's because even when you get that $1,500 retainer or $3,000 retainer, you're not billing it. You're not billing $3,000 in the first month. You're probably just billing $750 or so. So the cash flow is pretty much the same because you're getting the money that you would be billing anyway. You're getting it right then. It's going into your operating account.
Right.
And then the next court date, which is probably the next month, you've worked out the next agreement. So you're getting $500 or whatever it is, depending on where you're at. And that's the same thing that you would be billing otherwise, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
And so there really hasn't been an issue. I honestly, I haven't been worried about it. It's the energizing part about it for me is just seeing like, hey, I'm helping a lot more people, and I know that I'm charging them an effective hourly rate that is as high or higher than it would be. And that's really the simplest calculus that I've made. It's like, just look at this first step you're doing for them, and if it's going to take 2-3 hours and you're charging them $750, then you're winning.
Yeah, and then it also gives you the motivation, or like the drive to want to see what I can do to get that service out the door more efficiently.
Yeah.
Right. And that's some of the things you've been working on with your document automation and so forth. So maybe in the past it would take 3 hours.
Yeah.
$750.
Right.
And that's $250 an hour. That's good.
Right.
But now I think with your paralegal and some of the things you've done, now that's been cut in half, right? So an hour and a half at $750 is more like $500 an hour.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be like 20 minutes of review of the docs for me. And then I'll be the one going to court, and court can take anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour.
Yep.
In a perfect scenario, you're spending, 30 minutes on the case, and you have 3 or 4 cases up that you're handling that morning.
Right.
So it can really start to make sense at that point.
And have you seen the clients, when you deliver that initial service, many of the clients transitioning to want additional services from there, or transitioning to more of the full reputation? I know you've been doing the payment plan from there as well, so they've been continuing in that way. Yeah,
no, there is definitely the transition, and I think that probably 50% is a fair number. That's kind of where I'm at. Some clients, they leave happily. They're like, "That's all I need done."
Yeah,
other clients
great.
are like, "Okay, this makes sense," and they, when they didn't seemingly have the money before, they now have it because they trust you. They're able to go to family and friends, or they're willing to take out a loan because they trust that you can help solve their problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You really instill that trust in the relationship, and then they know that you've got their back, and then they can go find the resources from there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas initially, if you're trying to get that up front, they're leery, right? They haven't had a chance. Maybe they've met you if you've had them come in the office.
Right.
But one of the things you said earlier was, hey, I was trying to do this all over the phone.
Yeah.
So now you're getting the folks in the door. They're getting more comfortable because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're giving them a service option that's a lot lower risk financially, and it's very clear and so forth. And then once they've had that opportunity, now they're getting a chance to try out your service, get an experience of what it's like working with you. And so at that point, they have the confidence they need to pick up the phone and talk to their family, or get the resources together in whatever way they need to, because they know that they have someone that's going to be a true advocate for their case.
Yep, absolutely.
Which you are.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing these strategies. It's really been exciting to see the positive impact some of these adjustments have been making on your practice, and especially considering that you're a new dad, and you've got someone else that's really responsible for making these things work. And so it's just been really thrilling to work with you in the way that we've been able to work together again personally, and see these things have some success, and know that creates some financial security for you and your family, and certainly that you're opening the doors to providing services to a lot more clients than you otherwise would in the past.
Yeah.
If we're going from 8% to 30%, that means not only are you getting 3 times as many clients hiring you and getting that revenue in the door, but also that's 3 times as many more clients that are receiving legal services that otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of those folks, maybe some of them, it was, I just couldn't do the 15 to 3,000, or it was just too much to make that decision. But some folks, that might be too high of a barrier to climb.
Yep.
Right. And so you've also been opening the doors for a lot more folks. And so I think that's one of the things that's such the greatest potential of what it is we're all doing here, is not only building a more successful firm and getting the systems developed to make this very profitable for your practice, but that it doesn't have to be this or helping people in a way that's more affordable, right?
Yeah.
It can be both at the same time. And it's just been really exciting to see you be able to do that in what is a challenging market. Cook County is a huge county. There's 4 different courthouses. People are coming. It's very diverse, right? And you've still been able to execute on that within a market like this. And so it's just a telltale for all the things that we're talking about and how well they can impact a practice.
Yeah, it's been great, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, man, looking forward to the rest of the year and being there to continue to refine these processes and share some of the tools that we've been researching and Direct Connect and some of the document automation systems we've been seeing that are out there now. And it's just a really exciting time in the practice of law with all the legal technology that's available in education and training. So just really looking forward to seeing what we can accomplish in the years ahead.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah. So thanks again, man. And for those of you that are listening as well and participating in the podcast, welcome back. It's been a few months, but we're really excited to start putting out these podcast episodes again so that you can learn these best practices and start implementing them into your practice. Of course, in the Unbundled Attorney account, you now have access to the training center. So we'll be releasing video trainings that are a little bit longer form so you can get the nuts and bolts from attorneys and experts in our industry. So if you're an active attorney, just log in on your account at unbundledattorney.com, click on the training center tab at the top and access all those trainings that will be sending out notifications as we're releasing new training. So really here to give you all the guidance that you need in order to make some of the shifts that Bobby has made and hopefully see the same kinds of positive outcomes in your practice as well. So really appreciate you being a part of this community, and we'll certainly look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
For more information about how our exclusive Unbundled leads can help you grow your practice, visit our website at unbundledattorney.com. You can watch each new episode of the podcast on the Unbundled Attorney YouTube channel, or if you prefer to listen, you can find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. And be sure to subscribe so you get each new episode as soon as it's available. And remember to leave us your review on iTunes. We read each and every one of them and really appreciate your support of the show. Once again, thanks for listening.